Today on Power Women of Queens, Lucia Dragos meets Maureen Fonseca, the president of Sports and Arts in Schools Foundation, the largest provider of after-school programs in the New York City Public Schools, based in Woodside, Queens.
And I realized that balance was important to me, and that unless I got physical exercise and I spent a lot of time with my family, I would not be able to be whole.
QPTV presents Power Women of Queens, a series that highlights the everyday female decision maker, political leader, manager, and scientist as the norm, not the exception. The women featured are everyday women, mothers, wives, sisters, and co-workers whose actions have contributed to the Queens community. A graduate of Vassar College, Maureen Fonseca holds a master's degree and a PhD in French literature from Fordham University. She began her educational career as a French and Spanish high school teacher and college professor. In tribute, the Master School, where she was headmaster for many years, recently named their new athletic and arts center after her. Maureen Fonseca has spent her life helping young people succeed, and she still continues to serve that mission.
Starting as a young college grad, did you always know what your career path will be?
Well, I always had a sense that I would be interested in education, and actually prior to coming to college, I had taught for a year in Guyana, where I grew up, at middle and high school. Wow. Having done the O-levels and A-levels with the British system. And so I had the chance to come to college on a scholarship, and I was studying French and Russian and focused on French literature, and thought perhaps I'd be a college professor initially. But my life changed.
What were some of the challenges that you had to go through? You mentioned you were an immigrant.
Right.
Did you always feel that you had to work twice as hard as everyone else from here?
Well, I did in a way have that pressure of trying to understand the system, and my family was very far away. My husband is from East Africa, so he didn't know a whole lot either. So we had to use mentors to navigate the system.
What qualities in your character would you say you use the most to bring you to where you are today?
Well, it's interesting. I think the first thing is that I love being with people. I really believe that there's incredible talent in the staff around me, and that as a leader, my job is to value all of the staff and help them grow as well, so that we could then serve our children. So it's this sense of valuing people, I think, that's important in leadership. The other thing is that I really like to listen, and I think there's a teacher in me that wants to put myself in the shoes of others, and so that has helped me be successful as a leader.
Were you ever discouraged from your mistakes, or you were trying to learn and go on?
Well, I've made probably too many mistakes to count. But that being said, I don't know if you've read Carol Dweck, The Growth Mindset. It's a wonderful book that I think is part of my philosophy, and I only read her recently, but it's something that teaches you, I identified with, because you learn that it's from failures and mistakes and disappointments and setbacks that you can actually become stronger. And I've always had more of that growth mindset, I think, that I wanted to, I did make mistakes, for example, thinking I could get it all done, and I had to learn to delegate better, and to not run myself totally ragged, and to make space for reflection as the leader. So there was a lot I learned along the way that I think...
You mentioned about having an O, and I know you're a mom.
Yes.
How were you able to balance motherhood and career? Because you earned your PhD, right?
Right. While having a high-end job.
While having a high-end job. And...
Yes. So I, I have to give a little credit to my husband. He was supportive, very supportive, because it was something that I wondered how we would manage. But I did have to work in a crazy kind of way. I would put the kids to bed at 9 o'clock. I would sleep from 9 to midnight, and then I would write at night from midnight to 6 every time a chapter was due, which was once a month. So you learn, and luckily I was young, so I had the energy to do that. But I also think that from very young, I realized that balance was important to me, and that unless I got physical exercise and I got spent a lot of time with my family, I would not be able to be whole and to have an authentic voice. So somehow it worked. It was challenging, but we got it done.
It's a grueling schedule.
It's a busy schedule. And I remember once, and this I think wouldn't happen that much nowadays, but I was just founding the school, St. Philip's Academy, and I had 3 young children, and then a 4th was born after I had just started. So I ended up just taking 3 weeks off and coming back with that, bringing the baby to work and managing to, it was a very small school at the time, so we were able to manage, but it was, you make do, you figure out your circumstances. And as I got into a much more high-end level of functioning, obviously you had to set more boundaries, but you make do and find people to help you.
Right.
Yeah.
And I like you mentioned something that you have to know where to prioritize and what you can sacrifice. Because as parents, working parents, sometimes we get to give all in all areas, but sometimes we have to know where we should prioritize more and what we're able to sacrifice. Family time or career time.
Yes, and I think something we have to learn, especially people who are achieving types, is
overachievers.
Overachievers, is that we can't be perfectionistic. It is about setting priorities almost on the daily basis. There's a book I've read called The One Thing. I'm forgetting the author right now, but it points out that all of successful leaders actually have a habit of not just coming up with a very long list of to-do items, but choosing what is strategic and what is the key priority to accomplish today, to accomplish this week, and have very clear goals.
Yes, choosing your focus.
Yes.
Did you ever have a working mom's guilt?
A little bit, yes. But I found that my children were happy because I was happy, and I did a lot for them, and I cooked dinner every night. There were things that I enjoy doing that I find therapeutic, and we had family dinners. So it wasn't as difficult in that sense. I also, at some point, felt, I have this dissertation fellowship. It's not a choice. I have to do the PhD. That was the hardest realm because I was teaching part-time while doing the writing in a very short period. So you always feel like you wish you could have more time with your children, but I think
they grow so fast.
They do grow fast, but they don't seem, they're extremely close to each other, and we see each other very regularly. And so they put up with us.
We can have it all.
Well, to some degree, I think it is.
At certain times of our life.
Yes, and you have a lot of, there are sacrifices or compromises to make, but you need support. My family wasn't here. As I mentioned, my husband was, he's an Episcopal minister, and so he would try to help between 3 and 6, and then I would step in, and then I would get back to work, and we worked very well as a team. So, so you have to have support from somewhere.
Stay tuned for more Lucia and Maureen Fonseca.
Staff that inspire the children to believe in more possibilities for themselves, and it's just very satisfying.
Hi, I'm Lucia Dragos, and I'm editing Power Women of Queens. Watch QPTV. It's on now. go back, would you do something differently?
I've always loved what I was doing, and in fact, when I thought I'd be a college professor, it's because I just loved being in the library and learning constantly. So and when I founded St. Philip's, it was almost an imperative from within me that I'd harbored this idea of making a school of excellence for kids who didn't have this opportunity. Since I was in high school, we talked of doing that with my headmistress, so it felt like necessary when I did it. And then all the other jobs I've done, there haven't been many because I tend to stay for a little while and dig in, have been very fulfilling. And I think it's because I've always worked with young people, as I'm doing now with Sports and Arts in Schools Foundation. And so,
speaking of which, would you say that's your mission in life?
Right now, it's this amazing new challenge for me, which was a little risky for me to take this step because it was different to the other types of leadership roles I'd had in some degree. However, the goal, the passion, is indeed part of my narrative, that I've always wanted to provide opportunities, because I felt I've had so many great opportunities. Even though I come from the third world, we had an incredible school, and I was able to come here on a scholarship. So I wanted to find a way to work with more kids and to affect the system in a very broad way. So seeing what Jim O'Neill and the founders have done with building Sports and Arts up to be this incredible place that gives right now 25,000 kids opportunities to explore new passions and to commit to their academics in a deeper way I feel really honored and humbled to have the chance to learn and to grow here.
And what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job right now?
Well, there are two parts, I would say. One, of course, is when I'm at the schools or attending a performance that the staff has asked me to come to, and I have a chance to see what they're working on in more detail. But whenever you enter one of our schools, these are places of such joy and optimism and caring staff that inspire the children to believe in more possibilities for themselves. And it's just very satisfying. Working with the staff also and ensuring that we can help the staff grow, as I mentioned, valuing them and through our new strategic planning efforts, addressing what is needed to support the staff in their visions and aspirations, because at the 110 sites that we are now present at, these are the people that are working in the trenches and care so deeply for the kids. So I find it very fulfilling to work on their behalf.
After the break, more Lucia and Maureen Fonseca.
Or letting go of a job you were in where you weren't growing because you start to stagnate.
The most culturally diverse city in the world now has its own show, Culture Express, hosted by Astoria, Queens native Louis Gasparo. Join QPTV and Louis on adventures in Queens and learn more about Queens' art, music, history, and its people. Culture Express, only on QPTV.
Now, speaking of youth in Queens, what advice would you have if you have to single out one thing that they have to work on in order for them to succeed later in life? What would that be?
Well,
maybe two things.
Yeah. I don't think it can ever be just one thing, except that you and I were talking about the need to focus on what's essential. So our programs are helping students understand who they are and what they might be passionate about also. But I think everybody needs to know, and you and I know this, that developing that discipline and hard work, seeing things to completion, whatever it is they're engaged in, is going to be very important as leaders and as just people who are successful in their careers. So I think that's a big thing to me. Now, we offer many ways for that to happen. So the other message for the kids is that they should try new things, they should see what they might become, and not let society and the myths about minorities or immigrants or the fear girls have sometimes of getting into the field of science and technology. They shouldn't let that limit who they are. And so our programs are exposing them in so many ways, and you can just see the confidence building. So I encourage them to keep striving, working hard, but exploring possibilities, because there's incredible potential. And we have a very holistic approach to education, which is another thing that has drawn me to sports and arts.
Right. That reminds me, sometimes I have a dialogue with young people and they ask me, do you always knew what you wanted to do? And I always say, no. I still don't know and I'm not sure, and my life path changes. Would you say it's okay for them not to know and just, like you said, explore?
Absolutely. I think it's much more about discovering who they are and what they might be interested to really learn deeply, and being faithful in whatever project they're undertaking, but recognizing that their education is going to be key to their success.
I want to end with a quote from Albert Einstein, who said, once you stop learning, you start dying. Would you say that's true? And would you say every one of us needs to commit to a lifelong learning?
Absolutely. I mean, who could say that better than Albert Einstein? But it's interesting because he didn't do very well in school initially, and now we know he was a genius. And so we are actually helping our children through sports and arts to learn that even if you've had a failure, or even if you found school boring in some ways, that it's your responsibility to keep working and to make sure you get a very good education. But it doesn't end with students. I feel that whenever I've been extremely successful in a job, that's when I feel it's time to leave, because I've done what I came to achieve. And so each of the schools where I was doing really well, this is part of good leadership, I think, for me anyway, is that you need to send your child off to college. So I've been somewhere 12 years, off they go, which is letting go of a school, for example, or letting go of a job you were in where you weren't growing because you start to stagnate. And I think we have the potential, as Einstein is saying, to keep growing and growing. Obviously, eventually our bodies do fail, but wouldn't it be fun? I've seen so many amazing old people. One took up art at 96, one of my role models, and had exhibits in galleries, and she thought she could never do art. So there's no question that we have to keep our eyes open, and we evolve, so we might have new needs to grow in different ways.
Oh, that's wonderful. Maureen, thank you so much for joining me at Power Women of Queens.
Thank you for having me, Lucia. It's wonderful to get to know you.